Hello. I'm going to talk about how you can introduce and work with innovation in your organizations. And I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what the previous speakers have talked about. But I'm also going to introduce some new stuff. So, before we move on, and before I present myself, I would like you to present yourself to me. So, I would like you all, just for a couple of minutes, to please stand up. Okay, so I'm going to ask you some questions, and I would like you to answer with your body. So if you think it's yes, you do this. And if you think it's no, you do this. Okay? And this is just a warm-up for what comes later. So, first question. This feels exciting. Yes or no? Be honest. Be honest. No? It's okay to say no. You have to show it with your body. You can't do it like this. You have to do like this so I can see. Okay, next question. I'm from this city originally. So we have a few yes, no, around 50-50. That's lots of no's. Okay, where are you from? No. Let's make it a little bit more personal. I am a creative person. Yes or no? Be honest. Yes. Everybody say yes. That's interesting. I'm going to test that. And finally, I have a question for you guys. I'm not sure what the middle age is in this room, but I'm guessing 42. Which happens to be my own age. And the question is this. Is it really true that 42 is the least creative age in a human life? Yes or no? Oh, no, no, no. Oh, yes, that's, yeah. You know me? I'm 42. I'm not so creative. Actually, it's like this. There's, of course, no yes or no answer because it's very individual. But the thing is, when you're around 42, you have many things to lose. Many people have kids, loans on their house, a middle management position that they need to defend, and not so willing to take risks all the time. Usually people are more able to take risk in their younger years and a little bit in their older years because then they just don't care anymore. So 42 is a dangerous age, and that's my age. Please sit down. So, we are a company that helps other companies to become more innovative. And we see ourselves as innovation explorers. We have been exploring innovation in 30-plus countries the last couple of years. And we opened our doors and founded the company at the same day as NASA put the first crew on the International Space Station. We like that. NASA doesn't know, but we know. So we're buddies. Okay. I'm just going to give you one more example before we dig into the material. What do you think about when you see this city name, the city of Medellin in Colombia? Mafia. What else? Drugs. Coffee? Yeah. This used to be a super violent place. They had the same murder rate one time, 15 years ago, as they did in Baghdad. That's pretty harsh. Now, 15 years later, this city is totally transformed. We are a small part of that, and we're helping this city to work with innovation. They have been voted last year the most innovative city in the world. So they're actually racing. Everybody in the whole world is racing and embracing innovation. So you are not alone, but everybody else is doing it also, just so you know. And these guys are pretty good. These guys are pretty good, and they're coming fast. Okay. So I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can define innovation. I'm going to talk a little bit about motivation, which I think is really important. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to set goals. And I'm going to do a very short thing about tools, because we've been talking a lot about tools today. So I'm going to do a short dip there. And I'm going to end on measurements. Maybe not the most sexy of topics, but a very important one. So let's dig in. This is our definition of innovation. And it's very broad. It's a very broad definition. But you know what the thing is? You don't have to care about our definition or someone else's definition. In fact, don't. I think one of the most important things you can do when you go home from this today is to sit down in your own organization and make a definition. What is innovation for us? Because if you have that definition, you can start to talk about it. Before that, it's this very fluffy thing that everybody has different ideas on. And if you sit down and define it and write it down, it doesn't have to be a short, it could be a longer description, then you have something you can talk about. You can talk about what innovation is and how to become more of that. So define it and make your own. I worked with a company last spring in London called Mindshare. They are a media agency, media planning agency. And they had the goal to change themselves into a digital innovation agency. The only problem was they had very different views on the world of digital and on the world innovation. So trying to change that company from one place to another, where there were different definitions of the important words, different definitions on digital, different definitions on innovation, chaos. So make a good definition. Okay. This is a big topic, talking about the people factor. And everything around it, the support systems as tools and measurements and different processes you can use, that is of course interesting, but this is number one. You need to really understand the people aspect. And we can talk about this for a long time, because this is the most important ingredient. But I'm just going to do a short dip into motivation, because I found this a couple of days ago, and I think it's really interesting. It's a global study done by Gallup last year, and they study motivation in the workplace. In this one, it's also available online, so you can get it if you want to. And what they found out was this: only 13% of the global workforce. No, sorry. A lot of people were in this one. I can't see my slides. A lot of people were in this one, and a lot of countries were involved. So, 13% of the global workforce, they define as motivated. What do you think the rest are? Yeah, exactly. And this is the scary part, guys. These are the questions they ask, and you can always, of course, talk about if these are the right questions or not to get this kind of insight. But they define it as this. So we have the engaged part, we have the not engaged part, that are essentially checked out, that don't care about the company that much. And then you have the third piece, which are the totally actively disengaged, that go in more or less to sabotage every day and tell everybody how bad they feel. And these are the numbers for Lithuania, my dear friends. 10%. 10% of your workforce is actively motivated and want to think about innovation and want to think about the future and want to take an active part. The rest are in different stages of disengagement. And we can talk innovation all we want, but if people aren't motivated, nothing will happen. So what do you do about this? Sweden is 16%, so we're not much better. This is a very, very serious issue, and I'm a little bit surprised, actually, that it's not discussed more. I worked with a company in Richmond, Virginia, in the US, the Martin Agency, also an advertising agency. They also had some issues with motivation. They did a pretty cool thing. They reorganized themselves. Instead of being a project-based organization, they started to talk about swarming organization, doing the analogy to bees that swarm. And people were actually free to go into the specific projects they wanted to without asking their manager. And it sounds chaotic and crazy, but it actually worked. And motivation really increased because people now got to choose which project to go to. It's very difficult to handle the client side on that kind of organization. But it's one way to work with motivation. Some other things you can do. You can sit in a canoe and you can have a shark. No. These are some things I think you can think about when it comes to motivation. So, think about the next 3, 4, 5 interviews you're going to have hiring people. What kind of questions do you ask? Of course, the normal questions about the skills and what they like to do and what they don't like to do and what they've done before. But a thing I would like you to add, if you take my advice, is to ask some questions that you really can try to understand their motivation for being in the room. And also, personal recognition, of course, is a very powerful thing. So you know that. But if it comes from the heart, if it's really sincere, if you say, hey, man, that was really good. That was a good job. It's really powerful. It's one of the most powerful incentives you can use. And talking about incentives, I also think that you can rethink how you work with incentives. And not just incentivize with maybe money, but maybe incentivize with challenges or with time instead of money. There are many ways to do this. So think about the motivation aspect. Let's do another one of this, the real one, the real deep one. So please, stand up again. Now I really want you to show with your body if you mean yes or no. And I want you to be truthful. First question. Innovation is important for my organization, yes or no? Almost yes, all across the room. Okay. I know what innovation is, yes or no? Most of you know what it is. Okay, so it's important, and you know what it is. Okay? I'm really tired of the word innovation. Yes or no? Yeah, about 50, 40 maybe, 40 no and 60 yes. This is a buzzword, but it's not going to go away. It's there to stay, like strategy and marketing and all the other big ones. And we need to understand it. As I said, we need to define it. We need to understand it to be able to use it. So it's not going away. I'm going to tell you what I think innovation is. So please, take a seat. One very important thing is to set some clear goals. Because if you say to the company, we want to be more innovative. And then people say, okay, innovative on what? What are we going to be innovative on, right? And there are many kinds of innovation. You've been working with the different engines today. And this is another way to look at it. These are the 10 types of innovation that I've borrowed from an American company. And it's more or less kind of a value chain. It starts with profit model and what they call network innovation, and it goes all the way through to brand and customer engagement innovation. So there are many different kinds of innovation. And the traditional point, or the traditional thing when you think about innovation is, of course, the offering, the product or the service performance. And this is where the most of the resources are usually invested in the product performance. And that's also what we think. When we think about innovation, we think usually about some new things we can touch. But where do you think the most value is extracted? Is it on the product innovation, or is it on some other kind of innovation, you think? It looks like this. So the product performance and the value creation is fairly low compared to the value you can extract from other kinds of innovation. So I would encourage you maybe to broaden what you think about innovation, and also to think about where you can actually pull out the most value. I think this one is really interesting, the customer experience. In my mind, that's the hardest one to copy. It's getting easier and easier to copy organizational structures or products, but the bond you have with the client, the bond you have with a customer, that's really hard to copy because that's personal usually. So maybe there's some innovation you can do in that area. We worked with Greenpeace a couple of years ago in Stockholm, and they decided to do some finance innovation. They, of course, try to be innovative around many things, how they use their money and such. But they had a question one year that was only on how can we identify and work with quality donors for our business? How can we be innovative around finding those donors and working with those donors in a new way? So they decided, they set that goal. And they said it to everybody in the organization, and suddenly it makes sense. What are we focusing on this year when it comes to innovation? We're focusing on quality donors, innovative ways to find quality donors. Boom. Then people can understand it, and you can focus on that. Of course, the most successful companies, they work with innovation on many of the different pieces at the same time. So they do brand innovation, perhaps, and they do product innovation, and maybe something else. All right, I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on to tools. And we've talked lots about tools, and I'm just going to give you a little piece of this. It's one of my favorite things, actually. So much favored that me and my co-founder Jonas Michanek has written this book called The Idea Agent, where we have lots of different tools. Everybody's talking about tools, but we also have them, of course. But if you go online and search, there's usually process and there's tools. And in my mind, process is a sequence of actions, but process can also be a container of tools, like a toolkit. This is how we see the idea management process, the process of getting ideas. And the idea management process is just a small piece, usually, of the bigger innovation process. This is a smaller piece. Anyways, we do have first what we call the need definition, where we define the challenge. And then we do what is commonly known as idea generation. And we do not use traditional brainstorming because we think that's a really poor method. Doesn't work so well. Usually it works something like this. Do you have a good idea? No. Do you have a good idea? Always, yeah. But brainstorming usually is kind of, it's not that modern. It doesn't work so well. So we try to use different ways to do this. Then we work with screening, which is a way to select ideas. And unfortunately, when you look into the books, there aren't that many books that explain this in a good way, unfortunately. Then we work with enrichment, and sometimes when we do enrichment, we use different kind of canvases like this to explain the idea. And then finally, we have some kind of result. So again, it's a container, it's a sequence of events, but it's also a container for different tools. And there are so many tools today that it's hard for you guys to choose. We live in the era of millions of tools, millions of innovation tools. I did a Google search the other day, and I got 14 million hits on idea generation techniques. Other than, yeah, like brainstorming, but the whole family. 14 million hits. Doesn't say that there are 14 million versions of this, but there are many things you can use that is not traditional brainstorming, that is much stronger. And just the first hit here says, or one of them, the 7 all-time greatest ideation techniques. So be curious and find the ones that works for you. I'm going to give you an example. Negative idea generation. Have you tried that? Negative idea generation. It works like this. First, you have a need definition. And let's go back to the motivation we talked about before. So let's play around and say, we have, how can we increase motivation in a radical way in our company? That could be a question we can use. And to get some new ideas on this, we just simply turn it around and we say this instead. So we say, how can we effectively kill every drop of motivation? And then you ask the group for ideas. And the ideas you get is, we will beat them when they come in the morning. Boom. Or we will threaten their families if they don't keep the project deadlines. Or we will try to somewhere, give them pain. Crazy ideas, right? Really stupid. But if you take some of these ideas and turn them back again to where you started, like we will punish their families, let's say, maybe we will reward their families. So instead of motivating you, we will motivate maybe your father or your mother or your family or your kids with a free weekend in this and this place. So this is just a way of twisting things around and coming up with new ideas. There are lots of tools, so be curious. I'm not going to talk much more about this, but there are things you can do. When we helped the packaging giant Tetra Pak a couple of years back to redesign their innovation process and to write the manual with all the tools that they are using for that innovation today, we did something like this. And this is very simplified, but still. We tried to understand what are the logical steps that this company needs to take to go from need to solution. Simple, right? Try to understand the steps. What are the steps? Try to understand what are the inputs and the outputs in these different steps. So how does it connect? And then, of course, you have to fill this model. A model is just theory. You need to fill it with something. So what are the different tools you can use in the different stages? And what are the different brains you need in the different stages to be successful? So go home, think about what would the optimal innovation process be for you. Is it the short one that you can do in a couple of hours? Or is it the long one that takes a long time to do? Does it have 2 steps or does it have 16 steps? It needs to make sense for your business. You can't just copy someone else's innovation process. It doesn't work like that. That is also why ours is so generic. All right. So let's finish off with the very, very funny and entertaining how you measure innovation. No, this is fun. This is fun. If you don't know where you are, it's hard to measure progress. If you don't know if you're doing well, it's hard to know if you're kind of moving forward or backward. So these are some measurements. And this is more kind of an inspiration for you guys. I'm not saying you should use this, and this measurement, but it's an inspiration. And it's from 26 Swedish companies, or used to be Swedish companies anyway. Some of them are not Swedish anymore. This is how many measurements they are using when they measure innovation. Maybe you recognize some of them. This is the number of measurements. So let me highlight a few here that I think is interesting. So we have Alfa Laval, and Delaval, they're using 12 and 13 different ways to measure their innovation performance. I think that sounds like a lot. But there is no right and wrong. I just think it sounds like a lot of numbers. And then we have two companies, SCA, paper company, and SSAB, mining and steel company. They have 0. They don't measure it at all. And I think it's difficult if you put millions into innovation and you don't measure what you get out or what that money is used for. Ooh, a little bit dangerous, especially if you're a large company like this. Also, SAB, the host for today, they have 1. And I know what it is. You want to know? No. Yes, yo. Okay. So when you measure, it's common to use 3 different stages. So you measure in the input of the process, you measure in the throughput of the process, and you measure usually in the output of the process. There are different ways to slice this, but that's the traditional way. And 10 of the 26 companies are measuring number of ideas generated. So they want to know how many ideas have we actually generated this year or this month. And why did you do that? To compare, yes, to be able to know if they did better than before. But you can use this as a way to steer behavior. There's an old cliche that says, what gets measured gets done. So if you put a measurement to something, usually that gets done. So if you want to increase the flow of ideas, then maybe it's a good idea to start to measure how many ideas you generate. SCB uses this one. So R&D or innovation investment as a percentage of. And you can use that percentage of as you like, but in this case it's percentage of revenue. So how much of our total revenue is invested into R&D and innovation, that is. Okay, some throughput metrics used. This one is fairly, I thought that this was going to be more common. Only 3 companies are measuring time to market. So how long does it take from when we start the innovation process to when we can launch a product? Can we optimize this in some way? It's kind of an organizational measurement, how effective you are. And of course, numbers of innovation projects running is interesting for these guys. And then finally, when it comes to the output metrics, a financial measure. The first one, 8 companies are measuring how shares of sales, how many shares of sales from new products. So actually, are we making money from the new products we have put into the marketplace? And how much money is that compared to what we're making the old products? Interesting financial measurement, I think. Again, I'm not saying you should use all these measurements, but this is just an inspiration. Maybe it's time to start using 1 or 2. And again, what gets measured usually gets done. So if you want to steer behavior, you can sometimes use measurements as a way to do that. Okay. I've made a checklist, so you have something you can take away from this talk. So take out your cameras. Now, so this is the Let's Do Some More Innovation checklist. Number 1, as I said before, define what innovation means for your organization. Important, because then you can start to talk about it. Otherwise, it's just a very abstract, fluffy discussion where many people have different views on what innovation is. Number 2, establish and clearly communicate some innovation goals. Say to the organization, this year or this month we want innovation or new thinking in this area. This is important for us now. This is where we're focusing on. Very simple, but super important. Then, of course, I think it's nice to have some kind of measurements in place to be able to measure the progress, as we just talked about. And this is the traditional a traditional one to assign some roles and some budgets and who's doing what. So I'm not going to talk about that because that's what you do every day, I guess. This one is really important. We haven't talked about it. When we ask companies what is the most, what's the biggest obstacle for innovation in your organization? Many companies say lack of time. We don't have time to work more with innovation. We are doing so many things already, and the time is just not there. So maybe a thing would be to find some innovation time. Assign some innovation time. There are examples of companies that are doing this. I'm not going to give them to you because I think you've heard them many times. But think about at least how you can have some time for innovation. Because if you put extra time on what they already do, it's not going to get done. And also, I think you should try out some simple tools. Maybe design a process for innovation work. And last but not least, as Patrick said, test and learn, test and learn, test and learn. It's more and more important today than it's ever been before to quickly go out and test a prototype, test an idea, test the concept with a client, ask the questions, get the feedback, go back home, make it better, go back out again. There's a whole philosophy around this called lean startup, as I guess many of you know. And yeah, important stuff. So this is it for me. Good luck, and thank you.